Are you craving a trip on Space Mountain? Well, we've got the next best thing. Welcome to Dizney Coast to Coast.
Hey folks, and welcome to Dizney Coast to Coast, the ultimate unofficial Disney fan podcast. I'm Jeff DePauli, and today on the show, the time has finally come. I have visited Avengers Campus, and since I'm not the biggest Marvel fan, I figured I should bring on someone who is a huge Marvel fan to discuss. Enter Mike Mack from laughingplace.com. Avengers Campus officially opened on June 4th, 2021, expanding what began with the creation of Guardians of the Galaxy mission Breakout and taking over the land that once housed A Bug's Land. Listen as we discuss it all, from the land aesthetic, the merchandise, the food, the live entertainment, and DCA's newest ride, Webslingers, a Spider-Man adventure. It's all coming your way right after this. Folks, I don't know if you know this about me, but I am obsessed with candles. I'm a bit of a pyromaniac, and I love how candles help set a spooky mood as well as a cozy one. So I'm very happy to be partnering with a new candle company whose candles are inspired by theme parks. Souvenir Scents is creating handmade candles to help bring your most cherished vacation memories into your home. The unique scents are individually formulated to bring the most realistic representations to life. You won't find these variations anywhere else, and they even sell for less than you may have found at other theme park candle sites. Since Halloween is coming up, and I'm a huge fan of the season, I decided to try out their Halloween Horror Maze candle first. I've got to tell you folks, if you want to create some Halloween Horror Night sense memories in your home, this is the candle to try out. And of course, Souvenir Scents is happy to give you an additional 10% off of your order simply by using code DCTC at checkout. So go ahead and check out the different theme park attraction candles available by clicking on the link in this episode's description, and don't forget to use code DCTC to save.
It's time to dive into today's Disney dialogue.
Hello, Mike Mack, and welcome to Dizney Coast to Coast. Your first time here. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about Avengers Campus.
I am excited to talk to you about it as well, because as listeners of the show know, I am not the biggest Marvel fan. I'm just not an action movie kind of guy. And my fandom of Marvel probably lies within Spider-Man, WandaVision, and some Guardians of the Galaxy. And that's about it. But I know that you are quite a diehard Marvel guy, so why don't we start there, and why don't you tell us a bit about your Marvel history and love?
Sure, yeah. Well, I am the editorial director for Marvel content at Laughing Place. So, it's been like a dream come true to have Marvel in my actual job title. I grew up in the 90s, so on those animated, the X-Men, the animated series, and Spider-Man animated series from Fox. And then got into comic books a little bit, but was never really a diehard collector or anything like that. And much more recently, within the last 6 to 7 years or so, I've been what we call a Wednesday warrior, reading the new comics every Wednesday. And taking advantage of things like Marvel Unlimited, getting back into the old catalog. And there are just so many things to catch up on if you're a Marvel fan. And I've been working on that for the last few years, that's for sure.
So you clearly are a huge fan, and you've been a big fan long before the Marvel Cinematic Universe has existed. So I am curious, how do you think Disney does with Marvel? Are you excited with the direction they're going with it? Or do you think they, live up to what Marvel is?
Yeah, they hit far more often than they miss. The overall stories have been mostly true to the comics. There are definitely some differences here or there, and that makes sense. Anytime you're converting something from a book or a comic book to a movie, they have to change things for the audience and things like that. But overall, it's been pretty accurate, and I've really enjoyed. There's a few hiccups in the MCU, but for the most part, I've enjoyed just about every single one of the movies. And it's funny you mentioned that you're not a big action movie guy. I'm not either. And yet, these stories and these characters really speak to me and, keep me coming back every single time.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I will recognize that, from the stuff I've seen, they obviously do a great job. I have a lot of respect for Kevin Feige, even though I'm not a huge MCU fan, but I do recognize like there's a lot of drama and a lot of story that goes into these. The issue I tend to have, I'm always like, if there were 90-minute versions of these movies, I would probably enjoy them. The problem is like a fight sequence that should be 2 minutes, in my opinion, ends up being like 20 minutes. And so I'm like, I'm just out of it. You know, at some point, I'm like, I just can't handle this. But yeah, it's a fair point. There is much more than just action with these films. But of course, considering how big of a Marvel fan you are based in Florida, correct?
Yes.
So you had to fly out to experience Avengers Campus, and you did it pretty early on, whereas I just experienced it, and I live here in Los Angeles. But, you know, I assume you kind of came for work, right?
Yeah, so I went out there for Marvel Day, which is June 16th.
Why's that? In
Marvel Comics, there's the multiverse is a thing. And so the main continuity is what we call Earth 616. So June 16th ends up becoming Marvel Day because of that.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So you came up for work, and we're going to go through kind of everything in Avengers Campus. But let's just start with like kind of that first impression, the look of the land, the layout of the land. And you get there, obviously, I'm going to assume you've been in Disney California Adventure before. You'd probably experienced Bugs Land, right?
I did not, actually. So I have been to Disney California Adventure before, but it was when construction had already begun on Avengers Campus. So Bugs Land was already long gone, unfortunately. And this was only my second time ever there. So
okay, cool. Well, what was the impression when you get to the entrance of Avengers Campus?
Like you said, I went in the very early going, shortly after the land opened. So I was still dealing with the stress of getting a boarding group for Webslingers, Spider-Man adventure. But once that was all out of the way and I was able to just, get in and enjoy the land, I was blown away right from the beginning. Once you can hear the music hit, that iconic Avengers theme and, just sort of the scenery in there, it was almost overwhelming, in the most positive way possible.
Okay, we definitely had very different experiences. So the music, it's actually funny because I am not super familiar with the musical scores of the Marvel films. I could obviously tell it was from something, but I wasn't like, oh, the Avengers theme. And I was with a buddy who was like, why are they just playing the Avengers theme on a loop? There's so much music in this universe. Why isn't there like more of a playlist? And I was like, honestly, I hadn't even kind of noticed because it was just kind of background noise to me. But I thought that's kind of interesting. I mean, it is Avengers Campus, so I guess the Avengers theme makes the most sense. But one of the things I found really interesting about this entrance, and I'm talking about like the main entrance off of, it's not a main street, but whatever that main road is in Disney California Adventure, I don't know, the entrance was a bit lackluster to me. I don't know what the focal point is. It's kind of just, and overall the land, it's just very like industrial looking. It's not pretty. And I get that it's kind of like part of the story or something. But even as I was going around, like looking to take photos for, our Instagram account, I was like, what is there to take a picture of? Like the one spot is the Quinjet with the Guardians Tower in the background. Like that's kind of like the Millennium Falcon spot.
Right.
But other than that, I was kind of like, Oh, and I will say that magic area. What Doctor Strange?
The Doctor Strange, yeah.
That's a beautiful area as well. The characters are what are the photo opportunities, in my opinion. Yeah. There's a lot of character opportunities, which is great. But as far as like the architecture, it didn't excite me at all. But you're saying differently for you.
Well, I don't necessarily disagree with that because the architecture is, like you said, very industrial. And that is the story. It was a campus purchased by Howard Stark that was then given to Tony Stark and then used for the Avengers. So that all makes perfect sense to me. They're not, unique buildings in any way, but you're right. The characters are the photo op of it, but I just think it's the energy. There's sort of this atmosphere around the whole land that kind of hits you. And you're not the first person that's pointed out the issues with the music and the fact that it's mostly the Avengers theme on loop. But there are, if you listen really carefully to it, and if you're like me and you've listened to these film scores on loop multiple times, there are elements from like the Doctor Strange theme and the Ant-Man and the Wasp theme and the Spider-Man theme. They are all brought in there, Guardians of the Galaxy as well, and kind of blended into the Avengers theme. And so if you really listen closely to it, it will, play out those different movies. On the surface, though, you're right. It does sound like the Avengers theme overall. But yeah, there are definitely other elements to it.
One thing I will point out that was very impressive was this land. It's hard to believe a Bug's Land was there before, because as I walked in, I legitimately could not visualize where like a Bug's Land had existed. I was like, wait a second. Where is this in relation to Bug's Land? And it wasn't until I saw the restrooms, I was like, okay, that used to be a giant tissue box, I believe, the restrooms. So the restrooms are still the same building, but they've obviously changed the look of it. And when you come in from the backside, from Cars Land, that is much easier to visualize what used to be there. I'm like, okay, on the left where the Doctor Strange area is, I'm like, okay, that used to be Heimlich's choo-choo train. But like, as far as the main entrance, I honestly couldn't get my bearings in relation. So I'm like, okay, they definitely accomplished creating a brand new space in this same footprint. So that's an accomplishment. I'll give them points for that, for sure.
Well, it's funny, too, that I think we were considering the main entrance to be two different things, because I'm guessing when you got to go, you didn't have to deal with queuing up and getting in. You pretty much were able to walk right in.
I was, and when I say the main entrance, I mean where it has, well, at nighttime it lights up where it says like Avengers Campus across the wall, and you're kind of walking in where like on the left side is that brick building where Spider-Man does his little show and stuff.
Okay, yeah.
What would you call the main entrance?
No, that was what I was thinking. The one like towards over near the direction of Cars Land, at least. Yeah. Okay, that's all right. We're on the same page there, but yeah, that big photo op there with Avengers Campus, and yeah, okay, just making sure.
Yeah, so I don't know. There was no weenie in theme park terms. There was nothing weaning me in there. It was literally a sign that says Avengers Campus and like a brick building. So it's funny because some people listening might be like, well, you just don't like Marvel. It's not your thing. And I always go back to, I am not a Harry Potter fan, but I am obsessed with the theme park land, and I remember vividly the first time I experienced the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, like turning the corner, seeing the gates, seeing Hogwarts, hearing the John Williams music swell, and like literally getting chills and getting emotional. Yep. So I'm like, I am not of the mindset of you need to love the IP to love the theme park attraction. I actually feel quite the opposite. I feel like a lot of times there can be theme park attractions where you don't like the film, but you love the ride. And quite often the opposite as well, where you love the IP and the ride's a bit lackluster to you. So I don't fall into that category, but I didn't have that moment with Avengers Campus myself. As far as the look is concerned, one thing I will say, I love the cast member costumes. They're hitting it out of the park, I feel like, these days with cast member costumes, because I love them in Galaxy's Edge as well. They
are, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, they're so, like, they feel so seamless, right? Like, it doesn't look like a cast member costume. It looks like, this is a person that works at Avengers Campus. This is, especially the one that was like over the top for me was the custodial team. They have damage control outfits, and that is a group in Marvel that is responsible for cleaning up after those big superhero battles. So I thought that was a really funny little touch that they added.
Oh, I love that. That's a great detail. One thing I'll say is the land felt a bit cramped to me. I was a little surprised how tight it was in a lot of areas. In fact, we'll get into the live entertainment in a moment, but like even the area, like, having watched video of the Spider-Man show, I was surprised like where that took place. I was like, oh, this is like really just happening in a narrow pathway. I can't even imagine how crazy it must have been during the early days where like I heard the land was a nightmare, because I didn't have that at all. I had a very quiet day, thankfully. But I mean, not only were there a lot of people, but it's naturally a pretty cramped space.
Yeah, it definitely is. The whole land is a really small footprint. Like there's not a lot of space to work with in there. That being said, I think they did a pretty good job of allowing for, flow, of just traffic going through there. I was there in June. It opened up in April. So I got that initial crowd had kind of already passed for me by the time I got there. So it wasn't too crazy when I was there. It was still crowded in there, but I was able to, if the Spider-Man show was going on or if the Avengers Assemble show was happening, I was still able to walk through. But you're right, there's not a lot of space and it does feel pretty crowded at times.
One thing I find really fascinating about this land is how the storytelling, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to be the complete opposite of what we got with Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, where that is such a tight timeline, and there are a lot of rules to follow as far as creating new things. It seems like with Avengers Campus, they're like, okay, this is its own thing. We're not going to worry about that. And I find that to be really kind of a fascinating strategy. It honestly feels like a test from Disney. Like, let's go in two extreme ways and see how the public responds to it. And I respect both. I find it really fascinating, just because it allows them to do cool things in Avengers Campus that like they could never do in somewhere like Galaxy's Edge. But first of all, correct me if I'm wrong, and second of all, does it drive you nuts if there's continuity errors? Because I am a continuity person, but not being a huge Marvel fan, it doesn't bother me in this case.
Yeah, no, you're definitely not wrong. They absolutely went the complete opposite direction. With Galaxy's Edge, they are locked into the sequel series, so episodes 7, 8, and 9. So basically, you can never see Darth Vader there, right? Because he's long gone by that point. With Avengers Campus, it is their own new universe, and we've seen it change already with characters being updated based on what we see in the movies and the TV shows. And I love that. I absolutely love that they can bring these immediate changes to the Marvel Cinematic Universe into the parks. The day I was there was actually the day that the second episode of Loki came out on Disney+. And Loki debuted in the park wearing his variant jacket, like an outfit that had just debuted on Disney+ hours before. And so it was so cool to see him so immediately. I love that they can do things like this. I'm not a real stickler for continuity because you kind of can't be as a Marvel fan, because like I said, they have the multiverse and things are changing in different stories. Sometimes Peter Parker is married to Mary Jane. Sometimes he doesn't know who she is. So it's all over the place with comic books, and you kind of have to just roll with that. And that's something, that we've been opened up to in the past, and it works for us for the theme park as well.
Maybe that's a good reason why I'm not too into Marvel, because I think that would drive me crazy.
Absolutely.
As a continuity person. That's funny. Let's hop over, unless there's anything else you want to say about the kind of layout and look of the land. You want to hop into some live entertainment discussion?
Yeah, let's jump into it.
Cool. Well, as I mentioned, I am a Spider-Man fan, so I wanted to check out The Amazing Spider-Man. This is the very cool Stunttronic show that, honestly, for a while, I was concerned that this was going to become like another, New Fantasyland Dragon or the Galaxy's Edge, ships that flew over for like a couple days.
Right.
And I was like, well, I know I'm not going in the early days. I really hope I get to see this amazing Stunttronic in action. And listen, I've never heard about this thing not working. I've never heard like of days of it being down or anything. So this, first of its kind stunt animatronic that flies through the air is pretty darn cool. And the lead up is cool. There's a performer that, you see on the second story of a building, and it's kind of his entrance for a photo op, which I love that. I love entrances for photo ops. I think it's great. And obviously, it's all of their entertainment is kind of like just random happenings, but they all are scheduled in the app. So it's not quite that, but that's kind of how they feel, because they're not like grand, huge shows. They're like little moments.
Yeah, and specifically the Spider-Man show is, and you're right, I've never heard of the Stunttronic not working, which is surprising to me because it seems like there's so many variables to this show. But yeah, it is really, really cool. It's like you said too, an incredibly elaborate entrance to a photo op, because it really is like just, he comes up on the roof, does some flips, and then we see him actually fly through the air. And then he crawls down the wall, and then you can go take pictures with him. But so it's really funny to see such an elaborate, amazing show lead to such a small thing. And like you said too, they are now scheduled in the app, but it was, when they first opened, it was very random, and it was just, you walk by and you see it happening.
Oh, I didn't realize that. That's kind of cool. I mean, I like that more from a storytelling standpoint, but as a guest, I definitely am happy to know when it's going to happen. But that's kind of cool. I didn't realize that was the initial thing. I will say, I feel like all of this live entertainment that's available in the land, and there's quite a bit of it, it's kind of the highlight of the land for me, at least at this stage. It really brings it to life. And, beyond Spider-Man, we got the Doctor Strange Mysteries of the Mystic Arts. And this was definitely like the most show. Like, you line up to be brought into a space to see this show with some magical illusions. And This was probably my favorite of the live entertainment. Actually, I don't know. I like the Spider-Man Stuntronic, but this was a pretty cool show in a beautiful setting. I'd say the most beautiful setting of not Galaxy's Edge, Avengers Campus, especially at nighttime when it's lit up. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I would say if you have a chance to get in there when there's not a show happening and just kind of walk around, take some pictures, especially at night, like you said, it is absolutely beautiful. And yeah, I really enjoyed this show as well. I think I would lean towards some of the other entertainment, mostly because you don't have to plan out getting in line, at least 15 or so minutes beforehand just to get in to see it, because it is a very small area. Again, like there's not a lot of room to work with in Avengers Campus as a whole. So it gets kind of cramped in this little area here. But it's a really fun show. It's very funny. They really rely on that humor from Doctor Strange that you see in the MCU. There are a few surprises in there with some other characters that can also be very funny. So, and I'm curious to get back and see it, because I've seen changes we've seen so many changes to Avengers Campus already, but I'm curious to see, if they are going to throw some different changes into the Doctor Strange show as well.
Yeah, and then we have Warriors of Wakanda, the disciplines of the Dora Milaje. Am I saying that right?
Dora Milaje.
Dora Milaje, okay. And this was very like Jedi Training Academy kind of vibes in a less formal setting. The one thing I will say kind of in general about this land that I've never really experienced before is there are a lot of lands I've gone to and theme park attractions I've gone to where I don't know, the history or the backstory, but I've never really felt confused by it. I will say Marvel Cinematic Universe has such a rich mythology that, especially with this show, The Warriors of Wakanda, I was like, I have no idea what's going on. I have no idea why any of this is happening. And I felt like, I know most people, I don't know about most people, but I know a lot of people see Marvel films. I know I'm probably, I don't know, I want to say I'm in the minority, but I don't know how many like grandparents are going to see Marvel films either. I feel like I missed a lot because I didn't have that prior knowledge. And in cases where that were the case in the past, I didn't, even though I knew I wasn't getting everything, I didn't feel like I was missing a tremendous amount, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we're talking about a franchise that is like 23 movies deep at this point. So there's a lot of context that's going into the story in this park. And yeah, there are so many different characters walking around. And if you haven't seen or heard of them before, then it's probably not going to make a whole lot of sense to you.
Let me ask you this. I know that we kind of said like continuity's out the window when it comes to Avengers Campus, but in general, how do they do with that? Like, is there anything that really sticks out to you that you're like, oh gosh, this is really contradicting what we know?
No, not really. First of all, the costumes are so incredibly screen accurate. Like, having the Dora Milaje walk right past you and seeing those costumes up close, it looks like they were taken right out of the movie. They are incredibly accurate. But no, nothing really stands out in terms of the continuity, because especially, like I said, when I was there, it was the same day the second episode of Loki came out, and Loki was a show that absolutely took the timeline and just blew it up. So anything can happen at this point. So, you wouldn't really be surprised to see really anyone. You have Captain America, Steve Rogers, and then you also have Sam Wilson as Captain America in their costumes, and they never interacted in the MCU, but time travel's a thing. So that kind of writes that out of any issues out of the situation there.
I really did love seeing, even though I didn't watch Loki, I loved seeing these kind of updated costumes from week to week. And I'm like, gosh, that's an investment from the Walt Disney Company to be like, hey, we're going to build a brand new costume that's going to be used for essentially 1 week. Like, that's kind of awesome, crazy. Like, that's a cool detail. I respect that quite a bit. And I got to say, I am beyond excited of the news that Agatha from WandaVision will be appearing at Oogie Boogie Bash. I love that character so much. I have since like episode 1 of WandaVision. I was like, who is this? She's amazing. So I'm pretty stoked about that.
Yeah, well, it helps that Kathryn Hahn was cast to play her. She is fantastic. And then, when you drop Agatha all along, too, everyone's going to love that character.
Yeah, it's funny. I was not familiar with this actress until WandaVision. And I'm sure everybody's like, you've seen her before. You've seen her before. I'm like, I guess maybe I have because she's in a lot, but nothing that I remembered. But from episode 1 of WandaVision, when I saw Kathryn Hahn walk on screen, I was like, this woman is not only like has a really great look to her, but she's also incredible at like this 50s television thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, she's incredible at this 60s television and the 70s and 80s. I'm like, this woman can do everything. Like, she was phenomenal. And I mean, I'm just waiting for the photo op of Kathryn Hahn showing up at the park to meet Agatha. You know,
Yeah.
I was like, that's going to be coming. So it's pretty cool. Anyway, let's talk about Avengers Assemble, which basically takes place on the second story of, what's that building called? The Quinjet
Avengers
building?
headquarters.
Avengers headquarters.
Yeah.
There we go. So it takes place on the second story there with this was the most stunt heavy show, I would say.
Yeah. And I would say this is my favorite one. I really enjoyed, again, seemingly randomness of it, that, you can kind of be walking by and all of a sudden somebody is up there doing something they're not supposed to be doing, and Black Widow is watching this happen, and it feels so natural. Like, it didn't feel like a scheduled show, even though it really is. But yeah, it's just so cool to see. And then when I was there, every day leading up to it, in all the videos and everything I had seen, it was Black Widow and Black Panther dealing with this attack on Avengers headquarters. And so when I watched the show for the first time, Black Widow attacks, or is fighting with these villains. She stands up and she says, "I can do this all day." And all of a sudden the Captain America music hits and Steve Rogers walks out and says, "Hey, that's my line." And I was expecting Black Panther to come out, and that swell of music and the reaction from the crowd got me legitimately emotional. It was really, really cool to see, given especially the story that's going on with, the MCU right now, and the fact that Steve Rogers is no longer in it. Just kind of hit.
Spoiler.
Sorry if you haven't seen Avengers Endgame from 2019. But yeah, it was such an incredibly powerful moment, and that show just is really going to stick with me now because of that.
That's cool. I love that you had that moment. That's very cool. We also got to remember it's been there for a while, but part of the live entertainment in the park also is Guardians of the Galaxy Awesome Dance Off. So that is still there as well. But shall we move on to the ride? Webslingers, a Spider-Man adventure.
Yeah, I'm curious, actually. Did you get a chance to experience it?
I did. And here's the thing. This is what kept me from the park for a very long time. And I will say I got in with a complimentary ticket because I refused to. I'm very unhappy. I've said it many times in the show, but I am not cool with, maybe getting to ride the new ride and not even having the opportunity to wait in a line if I want to. I think that that's complete BS for somebody who's paying full price to get into a park. But the listeners have heard me complain about that enough. I will say on that day, I did get a boarding group for that as well as Rise of the Resistance, so it's possible. Wow. And I got to go on, but the fact that, first of all, this ride does not need the boarding group system. It doesn't. And it's not an e-ticket attraction, so it's kind of crazy that it exists, but whatever. We'll move on from there. One thing I love about this is simply the story is simple. And I'm saying that as a good thing. I feel like, especially in the MCU, there's so much rich story. And I think that that's, good when you're making a movie. I feel like in a theme park attraction, it often, takes away from the experience. I'm like, just tell me the simple goal here and let's do it. And that's what this has. You've essentially been recruited to help Spider-Man destroy the Spiderbots that keep multiplying before they destroy Avengers Campus. And that's all that it is. And I'm good with that.
Yeah, I totally agree. Going into my experience, I had been, so obviously we were all very excited. Avengers Campus is opening. It's this huge investment. There's a brand new attraction, and, expectations were sky high. And then the first sort of reviews about it were like, it's not an e-ticket. It's not, this big exciting new attraction. So my expectations going into it were tempered quite a bit. And then the ride far exceeded those expectations because it was a lot of fun. Like you said, the story was simple, easy to follow. And I think, as a Marvel fan, I could see that would be something that anyone could follow. You don't need a whole lot of Marvel knowledge going into it. There are lots and lots of details throughout the queue and that, add to that Marvel fan excitement. But you don't need that. And so it's all just like extra on top. But the attraction itself was so much fun.
Yeah, and yet, listen, it's always fun to see Tom Holland. We get to see him in the pre-show, and I don't think anybody's complaining about that, so that's fun. But it is essentially Toy Story Midway Mania. Let's face it. Like, it's even the ride vehicles are the double-sided, ride vehicles, which are great for capacity. That's a great design, whoever came up with that. Mm-hmm. But it's the same sort of ride vehicle. It definitely does a better job hiding that you're simply hopping from one screen to another than Midway Mania does. It feels more part of the setting. But I think the problem with this attraction that you referred to a lot of people being unhappy with it. To me, this is an attraction that is very much like, it's like when you're renovating a house and 90% of the budget is going into plumbing and electrical, and only 10% is like the pretty stuff you get to see. Because I feel like so much focus was the technology of shooting webs with simply your hands. There's no gun or blaster or anything. And that is not easy, I'm sure. And I'm sure a lot of research and a lot of stress went into this, and they accomplished this goal. But I think the reality is people don't appreciate that and don't care, really. Like, you know what I mean? It's the electrical and the plumbing. Yeah. And I think that that's the problem, and anybody who worked on this attraction should be proud of it. I think it's pretty cool that we can do that. And I will say, it's a workout, man. Holy moly. Like, your arms are legit tired by the end of this ride. But I think that's the problem.
Yeah, that's totally fair. And I think going into it, obviously, as a Marvel fan, just being put into that universe was already a plus. And then being a theme park nerd and, just being excited about the technology and seeing stuff like that, and how, like you said, coming from Toy Story Mania, and how that ride system could be adapted into this kind of story. And then not having to use any sort of tool. It's just your hands. And I was actually really surprised at how accurate it was. I was expecting this to be, all over the place and really difficult to actually aim, but I had no problems with it at all. It was really, close to what I thought it should be. Like, it feels like you're really shooting these webs out of your hands.
And I will say that, like, they designed it in a way, there are so many Spiderbots that it's like, you're probably more likely to hit a Spiderbot than not. Right. Because there are just so many of them. So, listen, people love, quote unquote, winning and gaining points and such. So they designed it in a way that you're just flinging your arms around, and chances are you'll probably hit something. So that's cool. But, when you're talking about a Spider-Man ride, we would be remiss not to mention or compare it with the Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man at Universal's Islands of Adventure. Whether or not this is a fair comparison honestly doesn't matter. When you have two theme park rides based around the same character with the word amazing in the title, you've got to compare them. And I mean, to me, even a ride that is now over 20 years old is now, 22 years old, I think. The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man is such a better ride in my mind.
Yeah, and it's not close. I mean, to me, I'm on record multiple times as saying that is my favorite theme park attraction in the world. And obviously my Marvel bias plays a role in that, but
I will say it's one of my absolute favorite theme park attractions in the world. Like, it's incredible. And it's amazing to think how well it holds up 22 years later. It's crazy.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I don't think you can use incredible because that belongs to the Hulk right down the road there.
I'm sorry.
But
okay.
Amazing, spectacular,
it's amazing.
Superior, whatever one of those you want to go with.
Yeah, so, and that was honestly my concern when they announced. I was like, with so many Marvel characters to choose from, why would you pick a character that already has an amazing attraction that is guaranteed to garner, comparison? I mean, the answer is this, because someone like me who is not a Marvel fan knows Spider-Man.
Right.
So that's the reason, right? And there's a lot of kids who love Spider-Man. So that's the reason. And I guess those are good reasons. If we were talking Walt Disney World, I would have a much bigger problem with this. We're on the other coast, so it makes even more sense to do it. I get it, but having said that, sorry, Islands of Adventure wins this battle. One thing we should mention, of course, in the ride, you shoot these webs with your hands, but we're going to lead into the merchandise part of the story here because there is add-on merchandise for additional points. I know a lot of people were very upset about this. I was like, whatever. Like, I am not competitive at all when it comes to theme park rides. Like, if some kid with a blaster beats me, I'm not going to be upset. at all. In fact, usually I don't even check my points at the end. But I think this is kind of cool. It's certainly not required. I honestly saw very, very, very few people purchasing these things. I don't know how well they're selling or not. But what do you think of the web power band plus the add-ons that can help your game and shoot more webs?
Yeah, I think it's a cool idea. I mean, you're not required to purchase these things in any way. It will change your experience, but it's not something that you need in order to get the best experience on the attraction, I don't think. And this is coming from someone who hasn't tried the gauntlets, so I can't really speak to that for sure, but I can't imagine it enhances it so much that you feel like you need to buy these gauntlets when you're in there. And I will say, I am a competitive person. I love the idea of competing with that person sitting next to me and playing this game. But I'm also not going to be heartbroken if somebody outscores me because they have this, what is it, $50 gauntlet or something like that. Yeah, it's not gonna break my heart. So I don't think it was, something that should really bother people too much. It's not, like I said, it's not a requirement. You have the option to change your experience if you want to. And if you don't, then you don't buy it.
Yeah, I mean, the comparable thing is a wand in the Wizarding World of Harry
Sure.
Potter. I've never had a wand there, and I've never felt like I missed out. And frankly, I'm fine just watching other people do stuff in the windows with their wands or whatever. Like, that's plenty good for me. But yeah, so let's move on to the merchandise then, because the main source of merchandise is web suppliers and Avengers Campus. We talked about the add-ons for the ride, but then there's the Spiderbot, which is a central character. Now, does the Spiderbot exist in anything other than Avengers Campus?
It exists in a comic that was made to tie into Avengers Campus, but aside from that, no, not so much.
Okay, so this was an invented thing for the land so that they could sell them for $79.99. And these, are little like remote control robotic spider bots, and it's kind of like a droid.
Yeah, same concept. I mean, it moves around with a remote control. It's not much more than that, to be honest.
One of the things I thought was really smart was you probably saw these backpacks that were being sold at
Yes.
Avengers Campus, and they had like this web rubber mesh on the back of the backpack where you could fit your Spiderbot into it and just kind of like carry it around on your back. And I was like, that is a smart design and an additional $50 upsell to get the backpack to carry it around. So that was pretty smart.
So just super cool designs on those backpacks as well. They're the type of thing where you're like, oh, I want the backpack, but I don't necessarily want the Spiderbot. Just give me the backpack.
Yeah, it was very cool. You could put anything in that web, really. Yeah, overall, listen, not a Marvel fan, but I thought the merch was lackluster. There was nothing I saw. I think the thing that interested me most were the Spider-Man goggles, which sold for $50 and had like these LED, goggles in the shape of Spider-Man's eyes with these LED lights. And I was like, those are kind of cool, but at $50, I was like, no way. But I don't know. Since you are an Avengers or a Marvel fan, was there any merchandise that like really excited you that you thought was super unique?
I mean, I am a big Marvel fan, but I'm not a big I don't buy a lot of merch from theme parks, to be honest. I will buy a t-shirt. I'm wearing an Avengers Campus t-shirt right now. But that's about it. Maybe like a magnet or something for my fridge at home, but just to commemorate my visit. I don't typically go for the things like the Gauntlet or the Spiderbot and stuff like that. And I thought maybe I would because this was Marvel. This was my thing. This is my big fandom. But yet I got in there and I didn't really feel compelled. I mean, it didn't help that I had to fly back to Florida the next day, but so that changes things too. But I didn't really feel compelled to pick up any of these unique pieces of merchandise.
Yeah, I will say that like compared to Galaxy's Edge, I saw far fewer people carrying merchandise around. I feel like every time I go to Galaxy's Edge, there's people with handfuls of droids and lightsabers and stuff. I didn't really see that in Avengers Campus. I'm sure that doesn't make them super thrilled, and maybe I was just there on an off day or something, but it didn't feel like anything was flying off of the store shelves. So a bit lackluster in my mind. One thing that drives me nuts, though, is when you build an entire land based around a theme, I don't want to see your merch anywhere else in that park. And it drives me crazy. They still have this giant soundstage over in Hollywood Land full of all Avengers stuff. I'm like, this is all stuff I just saw in the land. I mean, it must sell or else they wouldn't do this, but it drives me crazy. I'm like, this goes back to my continuity thing. I'm like, just keep it where it belongs.
Right.
We don't need to. Why Hollywood Lands? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, and we've been seeing that more and more. Like we've started to see the Galaxy's Edge merchandise make its way. Even like the stuff that's supposed to be made like on planet in Batuu has made its way out in Disney's Hollywood Studios. You can find it in other shops and things like that. So yeah, it's unfortunate. I wish they could stick to the continuity and the theming like that. But of course, they're going to do whatever they can to make the most money off of this product.
Yeah. Shall we talk about the food?
Oh. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's head over to Pim Test Kitchen. That's the main food location in Avengers Campus. I got a few things there. I got the not-so-little chicken sandwich, and this was the thing a lot of people were talking about, and I love chicken sandwiches in general, so I was like, yeah, I'm definitely trying this out. But I gotta say, they full-on fooled me, because I didn't realize in the photos that the buns are tiny. So I thought that the buns were like normal size and the chicken was truly gigantic. And that is not the case. These are tiny, like, slider buns with a, fairly large piece of chicken on it. But when I saw it, I was like, oh, they actually deceived me in the marketing photos.
Yeah, I didn't actually get to try that sandwich. That was one of the things that I absolutely wanted to, but it was such a long list of things that I really wanted to try. So I had the PB3 Superb sandwich, which was a peanut butter and jelly with banana and honey and bacon, which was absolutely ridiculous and absolutely delicious.
Oh, good. You liked it. Good. I will say with the fried chicken sandwich, for anybody at the Disneyland Resort who wants a really, 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 really good fried chicken sandwich, go to Riverbell Terrace in Frontierland, because their fried chicken sandwich is delicious. The one I had in Avengers Campus, it was fine. It was probably not something I would order again, but no complaints other than I was deceived, but good on them. They got me. Speaking of PB&J, though, I got the Proton PB&J Punch. Did you try this?
I didn't, and I'm loving how much our orders have lined up so that we seemingly tried like everything on the menu.
So the Proton PB&J Punch. Now, the thing that was surprising to me about this was the drink actually didn't have any peanut butter flavor. They just kind of put like these peanut butter balls on top and the whipped cream. So like that's where the peanut butter comes in. But I was expecting the drink to taste like peanut butter and jelly. And the drink was more just like the jelly flavor. It actually reminded me, and this is a good thing. Do you remember like those Otter Pops you had as a kid where you'd throw those things in the freezer in the clear tubes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. It tasted like melted that.
Okay.
And it was very, very sweet.
Yeah.
It was yummy. It just was not what I was expecting. I was expecting like a peanut butter flavor in the actual drink,
right,
not like as a garnish.
Yeah, I think I would have been a little bit disappointed by that too, because peanut butter is one of my go-tos. Obviously, I had the peanut butter and jelly sandwich for lunch in a new theme park land, so clearly that drives me, draws me in. I didn't get to try that, but I did have the Pingo Doce soda, which is the soda taken from The Incredible Hulk, and it is essentially a lemon lime. It tastes like Mountain Dew with vanilla in it, which sounds weird.
Interesting.
It was really, really good. It was very refreshing and yet a completely unique taste.
I also got the celestial-sized candy bar, Choco Smash Candy Bar. Did you try this?
This is our first overlap. I had this as well.
Okay, so this is dark chocolate, peanuts, caramel, nougat, and chocolate brownie. Whenever you put chocolate brownie in something, I'm like, I gotta try that. Yep. I will warn people, do not get this alone. This thing is big and heavy, and I shared it with somebody, but they did not eat half of it, and I was like, please keep eating. It's intense, man.
Yeah, it definitely is. It was delicious. I loved it. I will say I was there by myself. I got that at the same time as my peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and I ate all of it. So you're absolutely right. It was way too much food, but I still had to do it.
Yeah, it was crazy. I will say some of the things I didn't eat, but the presentation, and I will say in general, I thought the food was fine. It was not like when I go to Wizarding World, I'm like, I got to get myself some bangers and mash. Like, I love that stuff. But there was nothing that I tasted thus far that I was like, I got to go back for that. But it's all very Instagrammable, right? Like, it's all for photos. The Quantum Pretzel is very cool visually. And I think it was the Impossible Spoonful, which came out in like a giant oversized spoon with like, I think, meatballs, not meatballs, and some pasta or something in it. But I was like, okay, the presentation of these are very, very cool. And then the one thing I didn't get that I did say to myself, okay, next time I gotta get, is the from Shawarma Palace. The shawarma looks great.
It was very good. I had tried the New York's Tastiest. I should specify here that I was in Avengers Campus for 12 hours. So it's not like I ate all of this food all at once.
Listen, you do not need to justify it. This is your thing. You do you.
So, I had the New York's Tastiest from Shawarma, and it was really good. I will say I can't compare it to anything. This is my first time ever trying shawarma, and I still don't entirely know what I ate, but it was really good, and I would absolutely get it again.
Excellent. Was there anything else you ate in Avengers Campus?
I did get a drink from the Pim Tasting Lab. I got the Regulator, which was a mango habanero cocktail that was really, really good as well.
Very cool. Well, excellent. So yeah, there's tons of food choices. A lot of them Instagrammable. It's a fun. Yeah, the idea of the oversized and the undersized is like a fun thing to play around with, and yeah, it's there for the Instagram photos. So there's that. And then let's talk a bit about the expansion that's coming, because they're not done with Avengers Campus. I think they call this Phase 1. In my mind, it's actually Phase 2. Phase 1 to me was Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout.
Sure.
And unofficially, I guess I would call this Phase 2 with the opening of Avengers Campus as a whole. And we know that there is a Phase 3 or Phase 2 in their mind coming. What do we know, though? I believe we know it's an Avengers Quinjet experience, right?
Yeah, we know that it's going to be incorporated into that Avengers headquarters building, or at least that area, and there's going to be another building back behind it. And yes, it's going to be a Quinjet experience. You are going to be thrown into a mission with the Avengers. There is some concept art out there for it that shows some sort of like alien creatures being battled by the Avengers. So it looks like it could be, a really unique experience and something very, very cool for Marvel fans, that's for sure.
And this does not have a date or anything at this point, right?
Yeah, no, we unfortunately don't really know too much about it. It was one of those things that was announced a while back, and then obviously the world saw some delays. So, I don't think we have a hard plan for this right now.
Yeah, I would really hope that they recognize that this needs to be an e-ticket that really gets to people to the land the way that, Rise of the Resistance does over at Galaxy's Edge. Because, we recently saw with the announcement of the whole Princess and the Frog Splash Mountain thing that, like, budgets are being cut apparently, and it's not going to be, like, the great overlay we were kind of expecting or promised. In this case, I'm like, I'd rather wait another 5 years and get the proper ride than do a budget cut and just to get something out there in 2 years or something like that. So fingers crossed. I guess the fact that we don't have a date is actually a good thing, because if we did, it'd probably be a hugely abridged version of whatever we were supposed to get.
Yeah, you're right. And as impatient as Marvel fans like myself can be, I do think that is the right decision. I hope we get the full experience of whatever it is they're planning out of this attraction.
Is the main entrance expected to be the Avengers headquarters? Is that the plan that we know?
I believe so. I think that Avengers headquarters is more or less the facade for this attraction. Obviously, it serves other purposes with a show happening on it and everything right now, but that is the idea for that future attraction.
Very cool. Now, I gotta say, one of the things that I like most about Avengers Campus is the fact that it's an international affair. This is probably my favorite detail of the land. We have, an Avengers or Marvel area coming to Walt Disney Studios Park at Disneyland Paris, as well as Hong Kong Disneyland. And apparently all the stories are going to be connected in some way, shape, or form, right?
Yeah, and even right now in Avengers Campus, you can see the menu boards for Pim Test Kitchen and Pim Tasting Lab, and they're video boards. And at the top, you'll see a text message come across the screen every so often from various characters. And
you just took my trivia question. Oh,
oh no, sorry. Well, okay. One of them involves it's a text coming from Tony Stark to Hank Pym and letting him know, like, hey, we have another campus coming in Paris, so we want to talk about that a little bit. So that's that's a really fun little detail.
That's cool. Yeah, over at the Walt Disney Studios Park in Paris, they are taking over the backlot area. And I believe they're getting the same Spider-Man ride, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, and an Iron Man takeover of Rock and Roller Coaster. And then over in Hong Kong Disneyland, they're taking over part of Tomorrowland, and it's themed as the Stark Expo. They already have the Iron Man Experience, which is essentially like a Star Tours type of attraction, and Ant-Man and the Wasp Nano Battle. Have you gotten to experience any of this?
I have not, unfortunately. It's all on my list, but it's a little bit more difficult than just getting over to California.
Absolutely. Now, before we wrap things up, I know we touched on this a little bit with the Spider-Man ride, but I think we do have to compare Avengers Campus to the Islands of Adventure Marvel Superhero Island. Obviously that opened in 1999 with Islands of Adventure in Florida. But let's start with what kind of grade would you give Avengers Campus in Disney California Adventure overall?
Ooh, that is difficult. It's hard because like you brought up the Wizarding World, and I do think those are a step up from Avengers Campus. But after that, I think obviously my Marvel bias plays a role here, but there's no other land aside from those that I'd rather be in. I think Avengers Campus is, leans heavily on that atmosphere and the character interactions and things like that. But I think as a whole, it is one of the best theme park lands. I mean, I would say on par with Galaxy's Edge. So if we wanted to grade it, I don't know, a B+, a strong B+, A- in that range.
Okay, I'm living in the world of a C. I think it's fine. I think it's average. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with it. But if I'm going to be totally honest, I think I preferred a Bugs Land there. And that's mostly just because I really like It's Tough to Be a Bug. I think It's Tough to Be a Bug is a really, really good theme park attraction. Definitely one of the best 4D attractions. And I think I enjoy that more than anything I did in Avengers Campus, other than the live entertainment. I think the live entertainment is well done in the land. But yeah, I don't know, it's a C. It's not a thing that would get me back to Disney California Adventure. There are other reasons I would go there. And of course, if I'm there, I would go into Avengers Campus. But I don't know, it didn't rock my world. And I know this is going to sound a bit sacrilegious to say, but I prefer Marvel Superhero Island at Islands of Adventure, even recognizing the fact that it's an overall lesser quality. Islands of Adventure's Marvel Land is very much flats painted. The quality is much, much lesser. But I'm sorry, the Spider-Man ride there is incredible. And the Hulk roller coaster is a lot of fun. And I feel like Avengers Campus is missing that. I'm sure this will change once the Avengers ride opens, right? Once we have that Rise of the Resistance sort of attraction that just blows your mind and is next level theme park, I'm sure the grade would change. But for now, I'm giving it a C, and I'm thinking I'd prefer to go to Islands to experience Marvel.
Yeah, I think I would surprise you a little bit here because I don't know that I could say I prefer Marvel Superhero Island, but I do have a soft spot for that comic theming as opposed to the MCU. Each one has, incredible things about it, but I grew up on these two-dimensional characters and these bright neon colors from the 90s and stuff like that. So that resonates with me more. That being said, I think Avengers Campus is much more spectacular and grand and has those amazing costumes and character interactions, which that is one comparison between the two that is not even, it's like they're playing a different game. The characters and the costumes, completely different level. But, I would say Avengers Campus is obviously, on a much bigger scale, and, Marvel Superhero Island has that old school charm.
Yeah. And I think that they would be smart to lean into that these days, knowing that MCU is a thing that Disney plays with. If I were Universal, I'd be let's lean into the old school comic stuff. And really, here's the reality. It's much more in your face Marvel at Islands of Adventure. If you were to walk in, if you're somebody who wears glasses and needs glasses to see distance, I think if you were to walk into both spaces and take your glasses off where things were a blur, I think if you were to look at Marvel Superhero Island and Islands of Adventure, you'd be this is Marvel, or at least this is comic book. Whereas if you were to go to Avengers Campus and do the same thing, I honestly don't even know if you'd realize you were in a theme park, which is kind of honestly like applause on that, right? They don't want you to feel like you're in a theme park. They want you to feel like you're in this land that's owned by Tony Stark, and these are industrial buildings. But I don't think there would be any Marvel connection seeing it in a blur.
Yeah, I totally see that. And but I think the beauty of Avengers Campus too is that flexibility they have, and the fact that if they wanted to kind of go back to that nostalgic feel at any point, they could easily do that. Just have the X-Men come out in those 90s costumes and interact with guests like that. And it would fit. They could absolutely make that work. They do all those different typically it's over in Disneyland proper, but they do all those different themed nights and for, after hours events. If they did like a 90s themed one, they could do, throwback versions of the characters. And I think that would be a really, really cool way to bring in, an audience that is maybe a little bit different from that of the MCU.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that they can do, and it'll be interesting to see what they do in the future. Like I said, I really like them playing, especially with so much new content on Disney+. I like seeing them play with what's current in the time. And, it is one of those things that as time goes on and less budget is given to the new land, we'll see less and less and less of it. So enjoy it while you can. I'm happy to see that the Stuntronic is working regularly. I think it's all great. But folks, if you enjoyed this conversation about Avengers Campus in Disney California Adventure, might I also suggest checking out episode 807 of Disney Coast to Coast, where I have a discussion about Disney-owned properties found in Universal Studios theme parks, including a conversation about Marvel's Superhero Island, plus episode 621 of Disney Coast to Coast, where Kyle Burbank from Laughing Place comes on the show to talk about Ant-Man and the Wasp Nano battle in Hong Kong Disneyland. I'll include links to those episodes in the show notes, but now it's time for some trivia.
Do you know the answer? Get your brain gears churning and play along. It's trivia time.
Alrighty, Mike, do you want to hit me with a trivia question first, or shall I hit you?
Well, I have two because they are different levels of difficulty. So I'm going to let you go first, and then I can judge on that.
I was actually going to say, how about this? You just asked me two trivia questions because you kind of stole mine. Because mine was over at Pim Testing Lab. You can find the menu on a digital screen designed to look like an oversized cell phone. What detail will you see appear on the menu every once in a while further showcasing that it's actually Scott Lang's cell phone? And as you said, you will see Scott Lang, aka Ant-Man, and the undeniably studly Paul Rudd receive text messages on the top of the screen from other Avengers. So you already kind of mentioned that in the episode. So go ahead, hit me with two trivia questions. I'll take them.
All right. Well, we'll start with the easier one here, and it's just in the Avengers.
I'm going to fail this too.
Well, and yeah, they are Marvel based questions, so it could be a little bit tricky here. But in the Avengers Assemble show, what is the name of the villain who attacks Avengers headquarters?
I have no idea. I couldn't tell you. I know Black Panther was in that show. I know there was a girl in that show. Is that Black Widow?
That is Black Widow, yes. And I'll give you a hint here. The villain is the primary villain of the recent Black Widow film as well.
Didn't see it. Well, I would say the primary villain of the latest Black Widow film would be the Walt Disney Company for suing for screwing over Scarlett Johansson. So, no. What's the answer?
The answer is Taskmaster.
Oh, I've never even heard that name before. What does that character look like?
Very different in the MCU and in Avengers Campus from the look in the comics, but it's like a skull type mask and then a blue and orange sort of metal suit.
Is there a character in the MCU that does not appear yet in Avengers Campus that you'd really like to see show up?
Ooh, yes. And there was recently a video going around of some prop, like costume, like for giant characters. And I would love to see Thanos. Yeah, I will love the Hulk and Thanos as well, though. I think would be really, really cool.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems like that's what they're working on. I've definitely seen some of those behind the scenes. I think Josh D'Amaro's posted them or something, right?
Yeah.
Of some costume being worked on. Alrighty, well, I failed miserably. I'm assuming that was the easy one. Hit me with the hard one.
All right, so in the queue for Webslingers, you can find signs featuring several other members of the Worldwide Engineering Brigade. One of those members has appeared in the MCU before. Who is that member of Web, and in what film did he appear?
There's a little boy, right?
Yes.
Okay. There's a little boy who I don't know what he appeared in, but I know there's a little boy because my friend pointed it out. I was like, hey, that kid was in something MCU. And he's like, oh my God, he's gotten so much older. And, yeah. So listen, I'll give myself a 10% score for that answer for even knowing that. But who is it?
It is Harley Keener, and he first appeared in Iron Man 3 and then actually showed up in Avengers Endgame as well.
At a funeral or something, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Cool. Well, I sucked at that trivia. And did you know that you can find Heimlich from Heimlich's Choo Choo Train somewhere in Avengers Campus?
I knew that you could find like sort of I don't know what I'm not good with technical terms, like the chassis of the attraction vehicle, right?
Basically, the ride vehicle with the skin ripped off, so you can't even recognize it. But I think it's in Webslingers, right?
Yeah, I believe it's in one of the
in the pre-show. I think.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so that exists too. Well, this has been so much fun. I will say still my favorite thing in Avengers Campus is Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout. As much as I hate the exterior of that building, that is a fun ride and a great layover or takeover of Tower of Terror. So that's still the best thing there, I would say. And the cool thing is because Avengers Campus is there, the weights for Guardians is super low these days because everybody's attention is on the shiny new thing. But take advantage of it because the best part, in my opinion, now has like the shortest wait.
Yeah, if we're talking about attractions only, then yes, I would agree with you on Guardians being the strongest one there. And I actually didn't even ride it. I was in Avengers Campus for 12 hours and I never went on that ride once. I have been on it prior on my previous visit, but didn't experience it my last time out.
Awesome. Well, Mike, thanks so much for coming on and chatting about something you love so much. I love talking to people about things that they're passionate about. So this has been a lot of fun. I hope I didn't break your heart too much with some of my comments, but I got to give my honest opinions here. And frankly, I honestly don't even think I was too harsh in Avengers Campus. I think it's a very realistic look at it. Yeah, no, I don't think you were too harsh at all. And I actually love having these conversations with people who aren't necessarily big Marvel fans because I like to get that sort of perspective on all of the Marvel content that's being pushed out into the world these days. You know, how do other people see it differently from the way I see it? Yeah, excellent. Well, when there's the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids land built, I will come on. I can talk about it as like the pro in that area, and I'll have you on to be like the meh guy about it, and we can continue the conversation. But for now, why don't you let folks know where they can find you, or if there's anything you want to plug? Yeah, well, like I said, I am the editorial director for Marvel content at laughingplace.com. So just about any of the Marvel news you see popping up on Laughing Place comes from me. And then Kyle Burbank, who you're familiar with, and I have a podcast called Zax of Life. That's ZZZAX of Life. And you can follow us at Zax of Life Pod on Twitter. And it's a Marvel podcast from Laughing Place. So excellent. And I love that over at Laughing Place, you guys are like doing these 80s sitcom themed titles because Mike Celestino has been on the show before and talks about Who's the Boss. Yep. And then you guys continued the tradition with Zax of Life, which of course is a pun with the Facts of Life. What is Zax of Life, though? Explain. I always have to ask I've asked Mike so many times, what does Who's the Boss mean? So what is Zax of Life? So Zax is an obscure Marvel villain. He is essentially just living electricity. And I totally just ripped off Mike's format and decided to go with that 80s sitcom theme. So I needed something that rhymed with facts, and I found Zax. Excellent. Well, Laughing Place needs to come up with some show with a Growing Pains, related name, and I'll be happy. But in any case, Mike, thanks so much for coming on the show, and hopefully we'll chat again sometime soon. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was fun. I hope you all enjoyed today's conversation. On the last episode, we talked about FastPass being replaced by the new Disney Genie Plus program coming to the domestic parks. Be sure to check that out if you haven't yet. And next week, we're back with more Disney news, followed by a discussion about a recently updated attraction over in Disneyland Park. A lot of you have been wishing for this one. The easiest way to make sure you don't miss any of the magic is by subscribing to Disney Coast to Coast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Wherever you search, don't forget it's Disney with a Z, coast to coast. You can find any links and info mentioned in this episode by checking out the show notes link in this episode's description. This episode has been executive produced by Robert Scontrino. Gain rewards like Robert by visiting patreon.com/Disney with a Z, CTC. And don't forget to leave a voicemail at 818-860-2569 to share your thoughts on today's conversation and the chance to be heard on a future episode. You can find that number in this episode's description along with a link for some free gifts from me to you. And also, don't forget to check out Souvenir Scents in the episode description as well. Other than that, folks, have a magical day. Bye!
Thanks for listening to Disney Coast to Coast. Have a magical day.
Disney Coast to Coast is produced and hosted by Jeff DePauli. Learn more about the podcast and become a supporter at DisneyCoastToCoast.com. This podcast is part of the DePodcast Network. Learn more about this show, plus find more quality and entertaining podcasts at DePodcastNetwork.com. That's DEPodcastNetwork.com.